Welcome to What the World Needs Now with hosts Tom Whisinnand and Josh Monroe. We hope you're able to leave feeling encouraged and ready for another day of changing lives in the field of education as we speak with inspirational teachers from across the nation and world about what keeps their spark lit.
On this episode, Jen McNally, a nationally recognized advocate for mental health in schools, shares her passion about teacher self-care and mental wellness. Without any further ado, Jen McNally. Jen, thanks for taking some time to sit down and talk with us this weekend. For those listening that don't know who you are, what's your elevator pitch? Who are you? Where are you from? What are you about?
Oh gosh. Well, I am now in my 20th year of working in the mental health field, which when I say 20 years, I think, holy crap, I'm going to say it out loud. But then I'm also really excited because it's flown by. It's been so awesome. And then I think like how much more I have left in me, how much energy I think I have more energy now than even when I started. You know more and you do more and find things that resonate with you. But I grew up just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, moved to Lincoln, Nebraska to finish my graduate work. As everybody says, I mean, it's a good life. And it's a great just place where people wave and they're kind, and it's a fast enough pace where you feel that, and it's a slow enough pace when you need that too. So I call Lincoln, Nebraska home right now, and I'm the director of mental health and wellness for ESU 5, which is located in Beatrice. We serve 10 school districts down there in Gage, Jefferson, and Thayer counties. And across our state, there are many ESUs and that help support districts. And in that additional role outside of being an administrator there and a clinician, I get to present and work really nationally with school districts on mental wellness for educators and also speaking about trauma, the ripple effect that it has for our students.
That's so needed in education today. And you talk about the mental health of educators and students and administrators. It's just absolutely vital that we take the time to really recognize that and then also engage with it as well, and not just sweep it under the rug and pretend like everything's fine and everything's great. Jen, what got you on the road to wanting to be in education, specifically with your background being in psychology?
Well, you guys might remember from my presentation that I actually did at your school district that there's a vulnerable piece of that presentation that really took me a long time to feel comfortable saying out loud. But the reason why I chose mental health is a pay it forward for an educator. When I was young in the 90s, which is still the coolest decade, I think, the 80s and 90s. We had great music. So I grew up in a very chaotic, severe childhood trauma setting. And, it wasn't spoken a lot about that time. We know more about it now and well-versed in it and how that interacts with education. So I had an interesting, one day we went to school, it was around actually this time of year, what you're thankful for, what you're grateful for. And the teacher asked if we would write something down. And the night before, I had experienced and witnessed something that was very regular in our household, very consistent. And I went to school and I didn't have the words to express that. I mean, you're young and you don't know, and 16 years old is hard enough. And, a decade plus of that already going through that. So it was an educator that actually saw me without me having to ask to be seen. And it was an educator who absolutely heard me, and I wasn't saying anything. Does that make sense? I know for you being an educator that does, and for me working in schools, I can see that, but that was an impact moment that changed the trajectory of my entire life. It was I have hope in that flicker of flame. And I talk about this often, that you don't ever know when you make those impact moments. It could happen at any time, at any day. And it really took me a decade to tell Coach Price, thank you. I just I didn't know even through that course of just still trying to go through it. So the first part of my career was really working in, and was administrator then, working with high levels of treatment group homes and lots of kids that suffer from trauma, behavioral stuff that comes up. And then the large bulk of my profession, the last over 10 years, has been focusing on school and helping provide that destigmatization of mental health, not just for students, but also for the adults. And we have a Wellness for All model that I created at ESU 5, which is researched by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln now, because it really looks at mental health in a different way. We're looking at everybody feeling mentally well, whether you teach, cook the meals, you're the principal, superintendent, bus driver, para, you have to have a culture and climate that sustains safe place to land. So that's a big passion of mine and why I am driven to stay in education.
I go back to that presentation that you did for us at the beginning of the year a lot. That wasn't something I really thought about in myself, was that I need to stay mentally well. But listening to you has really helped me this year to remind myself, I gotta take care of me too. I'm gonna be there for my students, but I also gotta make sure that I'm doing well. So your speech, your presentation was really inspiring and helpful, especially this year.
Oh, well, thank you so much, because, it was via Zoom, and that was my first time ever being Zoom in that presentation. And I was like trying to sit still, and it was very difficult. So thank you for that kind feedback. I appreciate that.
It is hard to sit still in a Zoom call. You can tell those listeners that are going to watch on YouTube, I move all the time. I can't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I love the fact that you bring up, as educators, we are aware of aspects of children that they may not talk about. And I think that's not, how do I want to say this? Like, it's really part of who we are. And if we are exhausted, if we are going through trauma ourselves, if we are going through a time where, all this extra pressure and stress is on us, then that kind of takes our ability to read what's going on with other people. And I think that your experience is absolutely marvelous that this teacher saw that and was able to talk to that. And I think as educators, we have to be aware that to be our best selves and really serve children and other people around us, we need to be able to see that. So I really appreciate the fact that you brought that in, because sometimes as educators, we push math, we push science, we push all the curriculums and everything on our plate, but we forget that some of those intangible interactions are really, really vital. So
yeah, I mean, they're vital for every one of us as human beings, and especially our young people. They don't have the words and, even the science, brain development at that point to really grasp what's happening to them. And we talk about fight, flight, or freeze. And, another thing about going through trauma, just because we're on that topic, is a lot of times people think that kids have trauma and it'll always be shown as behavior and in the classroom, or defiance, or arguing, or using swear words like commas, which, but there's also this whole other spectrum where kids can really acclimate and chameleons and can still maneuver, and that affects them in adulthood, because they're not really seen as and heard as much as the ones that are so extroverted in it, some of us that are introverted. And that was kind of my role and what I so passionate about. Yes, I was that tough kid, but I was also the kid that you wouldn't have really seen with that. Being a class officer, I was involved in sports, I had friends. And so I just think it's so important that those impact moments is what I always just focus on. You just never know.
You never know.
And it's scary, it's terrifying. Even me as a clinician, I'm like always watching for the things that they're not saying and the things they are saying. So educators just do that so eloquently. And I learned a lot from teachers and administrators too, that make me a better clinician in the schools.
I think that goes to Tom. You tweeted out, I don't remember if it was this year or last year, tweeted out about going slow at the beginning of the school year, taking time to really get to know your kids before you dive into the rigor of fourth grade in your case, fifth grade in mine, or whatever grade that your students are in, but really focusing in on building those relationships with kids so you can be attuned to changes that you see in your classroom.
Yeah, I think that's the cornerstone of what educators are and what educators do. And I think it's a great time to be in education right now, because we are finally, I think, recognizing that we have to take care of ourselves, and it is going slow to go fast. And some of that going slow is taking time to better ourselves. And thank you to the mental health professionals like Jen, who really are preaching that and getting out there and pushing, hey, you have to take care of yourself as educators. So I just, yeah, I think that's absolutely great. Relationships are huge, but we can't have those unless we're well ourselves. So.
Yeah, and I think it's also been really cool for me to see throughout this course of, and we're talking in particular the last 9 months in a pandemic, well, where I lead with mental health, it's already been exciting, because there's so many teachers that get physical and mental health. Some really do. Some are like, and some are like, I'll put it in curriculum when it's time, or something like that. But I've also really appreciated how much superintendents across our state, I just want to put a note for that, principals and superintendents and administration who have contacted me and contacted other people I know that specialize in the area that I'm passionate about, can you come to our district, help us help our staff, what do we need to do? And we talk a lot about educators, but I also want to say administration, that's a tough job too. That's a lonely island at times, and superintendents making those decisions that some people may like and some people may not. And it affects everybody. That's why I say when we talk about wellness for all, it affects every one of us. Everybody has mental health, good days and bad days, challenging days. And so we're not and people always say, well, Jen, you lead with mental health, I'm sure you're fine. Nope. Here's the real answer. No, it have to be sustainable, right? Life comes at you, and you have to really navigate those challenges.
Yeah, you do.
And I take my hat off to Dr. Sutphin as well. He put into our PIE, social emotional learning, and then he had you speak to us. Dr. Sutphin does a great job of making sure that his staff and the students are looked at as people. He does an awesome job with that.
And he's very natural at it. His entire team every experience I've had with you guys and their administrative team, in particular with Millard, everybody leads with that first. So that's been really cool.
So Jen, you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time, because you have an emotionally taxing job, has there ever been a time that your spark starts to dwindle, or that you start to forget why you're doing what you're doing?
I've thought about that a lot recently, because people have been more now than ever saying, like, how are you doing? Like, how's your mental health, especially during this time? And I don't want to say that I don't ever have challenging days, because that's not true. But I've survived my hardest days. And I have a job that is my life work. And I think when you lead with your life work in those challenging times, you're able to really reframe your thinking, to recharge, so you can resume. And I owe it to educators when I step into their building, and I've said this many times, of like that quote, Ice Cube quote, right? Check yourself before you wreck yourself. The idea of letting people know what you need, but still being present and not interfering with those impact moments, those things that need to happen in an educational setting. And also, I get to go to multiple districts. So I get to see things that are inspiring every day. And that really has, when I think about it, made me be able to continue to move forward. Doesn't mean that I don't have days that are challenging, but they're not as challenging to what I've already experienced. And I get energized because of educators, which is why, Josh, I went to go see you teach. I always seek out, if somebody tells me about somebody, I always try to make a point to let that person know I see you. Because a lot of times we don't do that a lot for each other. We talk a lot about what doesn't work, and I really lead with like details. That's something that I really focus on, of how can I continue to be present and inspired by the details of what make people love to teach.
That's awesome. We had a lot of fun that day.
Yeah.
Jen came the day that we did the cardboard challenge. So we created this whole arcade made out of cardboard games and planned on reading a book to the kids, but you ended up having so much fun playing skee ball and the crane game. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you were like, who is this lady coming into our to my classroom? He was so kind. I knew he was just like, oh wait, who is this?
We had fun.
Mm-hmm.
That is cool. That is really cool. And I love the fact that that you go out there and you see that and you push the inspiration and you let people know. I think we have to believe in relationships. Now times are pretty tough, and we have to believe that the relationships are strong and the relationships are there, and we have to maybe seek out a relationship or two, but we have to believe that people in their heart want to look for that inspiration. They want to know about it. They want to know that hey, like you said, I see you. You're doing great things. Keep it up. And we have to really sometimes search for that, but we have to believe that that's what people
Yeah.
want.
And and Josh probably, he was so kind, but he is a famous TikToker. I did find that out when I visited. And his principal was like, you should be on a TikTok. I was like, not a chance. I think Mr. Monroe is great, but there is not a chance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was so fun.
I love the part that you said that when you hear about people, you want to make sure that you see them. I think that's an awesome thing. Tom and I, our vision with this is to help teachers feel inspired by listening to others or to reignite that spark. And you're doing it face to face with people. And I think that that's such a beautiful and awesome thing that when a teacher's having a hard day, you're there with them, or when they're feeling low, you're there with them, reminding them, hey, you matter. What you're doing is awesome. And that's inspirational and life-changing.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're coming up to the holidays, and usually this is a time where teachers really kind of take time for themselves, and they read or take long extended baths with wine or whatever you do to relax. But I'm worried that this year is going to be different, that we have so much stress and there's so much remote learning and so many lesson plans and so much worry about children and kids and situations. How can we learn to balance or juggle or take care of ourselves and reframe some of the stress that we may be experiencing?
Well, I think it starts, and I feel like I've been on repeat by saying this the last 3 months, is there are, in life, there are a lot of what ifs. And you have to have what ifs because it helps us collaborate and think about how to move forward. You have to have what ifs so you can brainstorm ideas to make it better. But also what ifs can really keep us spinning our wheels. It can really drain our energy. And so what I really have been asking educators to do across the board is thinking about what ifs is okay, but also channeling that to what is. Because I think that we get a saturation, whether it's social media or a colleague that's stressed, of what is not. And there are many, many more things, even in a pandemic, even remote learning and live in-person teaching at the same time, trying to get to the copier, trying to still, finish your coffee before it's cold. And I mean, all those things that we really need to celebrate more of. It doesn't take away from the reality. I'm not saying that, but I do think that we have to be more purposeful in celebrating the details. And I've said that a couple times with you guys so far, because those are the things that are the big things. And I just posted, and I know Josh saw that, but I love this picture. It was a visual for me because I was having a challenging day, and it was like what it looks like now. And it was like all scrambled up, like and then in what it'll look like in hindsight. And it was just a road. And I think if you reflect back in most of our challenges in life, in the moment, it feels all like that in our hearts, our minds, our spirit. But when we take it back hindsight, when we can reflect on it, we have pride, we have celebration, and all those things. And I think that that's just really important to do. And I was thinking today, I'm like, imagine what it'll be 10 years from now, and I'll still be in the field, and so will you guys. When we have new teachers come in and say they're stressed, we'll be like, buddy, don't even go there. Okay. Okay, we were the ones that, and we'll be like our parents, like, I walked 2 miles every day to school, those kind of funny things. But I do really encourage educators across the board, and me, myself, and my team working in education, it's tough to really focus in on what we've been able to achieve from 9 months ago to now. Think about it in hindsight. There has been a lot of marvelous, miraculous things that have come from it. And it starts with the pulse and the heart of education.
Yeah, there have, I mean, man, I think back to March when school shut down to now, how much I've learned, how much I've grown as a teacher. And it was hard going through it. It was rough. I missed my kids. I cried a lot, but I look back and I know I'm a better teacher now. You're right. That squiggly road, we feel it in the moment, but when we look back, there's a lot of celebrations that we can find.
Yeah, and taking your power back, so to speak, is taking care of yourself. And taking care of yourself does not have to be these huge, daunting tasks. And I talk about that often, of just recognizing a couple things that, spark joy. Something that spark joy. Something that you're proud of, which we don't do. We don't purposefully take the time to think that. We take the time to think about the things that don't serve purposes all the time. And so, channeling that is important, I think, for sure, especially going into the holidays, because it's tough. We have different, like for Thanksgiving, not everybody was able to have those celebrations. I know people are talking about that now. What will the holidays look like over break here in December, January? So that's tough.
Yeah. I think what you said about taking the power back is really vital too. And we don't spin our wheels. We don't want to spend too much time with the what ifs. Yes, we have to plan. Yes, we have to make some accommodations. But I think just taking that power back and really focusing on the lessons that we've learned and the transitions that we have successfully made, and celebrating. I mean, I have some remote students right now, and it's like dealing with little business people, and they know how to use Zoom, and their work is done, and they mute themselves, and they're 9 and 10-year-olds. They're not like kindergarten, first graders where you have to mute them constantly. But I'm really, really absolutely just impressed. Google Classroom, Google Drive, Google Docs, like the whole online world is really at these kids' fingertips. And they're, from what I see, the students I interact with are doing an amazing job. So celebrating some of those good things certainly help too,
Absolutely. Yep. Agree.
I would be curious about this, Jen. So your role in education is a little bit different than that of a teacher, than that of a school administrator or a district administrator. But yet it's not. You're still a teacher. You still teach mental health skills. You still preach taking care of yourself. And I think good teachers and good, like we've talked about, good superintendents, good administrators do that as well. Has there ever been a time like where that spark just isn't as bright? And then how do you, whether it's reading a book, or is there any tricks of the trade, so to speak, that you use to fire yourself back up and get back into the frame of mind where you want to go out and serve others?
I think whatever works for people is what they should do. For me in particular, and maybe it's because I'm old school, growing up in the 90s, with no technology, I tend to stay away from anything social media and really focus on things, whether it's readings. Keeping current is really important for me, and celebrating stuff. But like I said, I really try to make intentful, even on my days off, like I went and saw Mr. Monroe, of seeking out things that continue to inspire me, that I can, when maybe somebody else is struggling around me, I'll have that in like a file compartment in my head of, I remember I saw that, I might suggest that. And so whenever I'm feeling like, challenging days, I always seek out details. when you live in your own house, you're used to seeing the same things. But when you have visitors in your house, don't people point out things that they like? And
Yeah.
we can, as educators, become, we're creatures of habit, a schedule, routines. And sometimes we miss those little things that can spark stuff that doesn't need to be the big things. And that's really where my spirit leads with is I walk into a classroom and I want to look at every little thing about that teacher that they put up on a wall. There's a reason why they spent the time to put that on the wall. I want to look at it. And so that's really where I gain inspiration from. It's all around us if we just allow ourselves to be present in that instead of just constantly on to the next thing.
Have you ever read the book Dare to Inspire?
Yes.
Okay, because that's what it sounds like. Tom turned me towards that book, and
Great book.
just taking time to find that inspiration in everyday things is such an important part. Jen, we've got some listeners who are student teaching or planning to be teachers. We've got listeners who are teachers. What advice would you give them as they get ready to enter the field, or as they're trying to reignite that spark? What advice do you have for educators?
Well, future educators, I actually get to work with the teacher scholars at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I present to them about mental wellness. And what I tell them and also what I tell teachers are the exact same thing. You have to take time for yourself somehow in the day, whether it's 5 seconds and you just say 5 affirmations, whether it's 5 minutes and you write down some gratitudes, you say your I love yous to somebody, you sit and just breathe, right? Being centered in that. And now I say that and people are going to go like this. Yes, right. 5 affirmations are really going to help me in the midst of what I'm feeling right now. And I will challenge your thinking of saying this. Tell me how staying stuck is helping you. Tell me how you complaining about the 10 things that didn't go well is helping you, taking your power back. That is giving your power away. That is giving your energy away. And often when I push back on that, we don't always sit in the space of recognition. We don't always sit in the space of I'm proud of myself, giving myself that opportunity to have a redo when maybe I've made a mistake, or we just perseverate on all of those things that is not a reason why we can't move forward, whether we blame, project, all of those things. And so I give strategies and talk about simple things like make your bed. You can do a simple task in the morning that sets you up for the big tasks, and it doesn't have to be these big, crazy things. Also, as social emotional learning doesn't have to be curriculum, everybody. And all of you that are going to blow up the comment section, I'm still going to agree with myself saying that. Social emotional learning can happen in so many moments throughout the day. You don't have to have a lesson of a half hour for it to be impactful. Just saying hello to a student and asking them something, what did you do today so far that's been cool? That's developing those young hearts and minds to pause and build neuroplasticities, right? Strong pathways in our brain to seek out intentful things that spark joy.
I think that's so huge. Like as an adult, I don't have a social emotional book sitting on my dresser at home. So when I get up, I look up chapter 3, section 2 about having a good day. Right. So I think what you're saying is absolutely so spot on. The old adage about you see what you look for, right? This kid has been so naughty since kindergarten, and so I see a naughty kid in 4th grade. No, I need to see the individual being good. I need to see what's right in the world. I need to see to seek out those people that inspire me, right? Like I need to exercise my inspiration muscle. That's what Allison Holzer says, right? Like just keep exercising it. Keep looking for those things that inspire you, and don't give up. It'll be tough, but don't give up. I think that's so true. And we do give our power away, Jen. Absolutely. Mm.
And I think it's important too when you point out that you don't have to have a 30-minute lesson to do social emotional learning and teaching. I'm in my 9th year now, but as I reflect back to my first couple years, that's what I thought social emotional learning was. That I needed to find a 30 to 45-minute block where we were going to talk about blank. Mm. And since I have learned more about it, since I have read about it, since I've talked to people like you, I've learned that you can weave it in to everything you do, to every moment of the day. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really important for teachers, future teachers to know and to hear constantly.
Also, it's a win-win, because I talk about, I can't get to, man, if I could just say, okay, educators, you all have to do these 3 things every day, and then I just knew 99.9% of people would do it, that would be amazing. You would never need anybody like me in the school. We would just, there we go. We said it, go do it, carry forth. But I also look at social emotional learning in a different way than some other people. I always look at it as a win-win too for an educator. Mm-hmm. Having the educator participate in social emotional learning in the academic setting with students helps students see and hear from an adult, and also helps the adult see and hear from their students. It's a collaboration and community, and it sustains and builds empathy and understanding, and it reduces those off-task behaviors that teachers get, just are like, what the heck, right? That make us stressed out. We go to teacher's lounge and we're like, well, you should have seen my 4th period, right? It's just, yeah, I did. They came to my 5th, So you have to, it's a win-win as educators if we also are saying to a class, like the 3, 2, 1s, before quickly, what are the 3 things we did we're proud today? Right? And having that engage as a teacher. What are the things that we didn't do well? Rita Pearson talks a lot about that, and every kid needs a champion. Say sorry. Kids, they need to know that you're human too. And then the one thing you can do better tomorrow. If you have a tough class, that's the one to go to. That takes less than a few minutes. And then do your bulk of academics, which are just as valuable. You have to have academics too. It's an essential part of education.
Jen, I've loved hearing what you have to say, and taking care of ourselves and taking care of our students. And I really appreciate taking your time on a great day outside. It's beautiful weather. But what is something that the world needs now?
Like the song.
I was sitting in a hot tub, and I was thinking about a meaningful kind of catchphrase, and my wife listens as I edit this, and she goes crazy because for the next 3 hours she's singing it in her head, what the world needs now, and she just goes through the whole song. But yeah, wow, yeah. We need love. What else?
As cliche as people are like, oh yeah, we need love, hearts, 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 rainbows. Don't we though? Don't we need some of that? Don't we all deserve some of that right now? I also think the world needs to just have a pause before you respond. Mm. We need a pause before we respond. We need to think about our words and how that affects and has a ripple effect to many. And that's really what I feel like. I feel like we need that love, encouragement, celebration, what I talked about earlier, those details, celebrating them. Yeah, we have what ifs, focusing on what ifs is, and before we say something, before we know that like we're tired and we didn't have 12 ounces of coffee yet, we need a pause. We need to give each other some space and some grace in that. And, grace is used a lot in the last 9 months, but it is true. It's the defining word for what we ought to show each other, and what our kids, you don't worry about kids listening to you. You worry that they watch you. Mm. Watching you is more impactful than what you're saying, because they know they can hear you. They're doing those checks and balances. So yeah, just like the song, simple, and yet people make it a lot more complex at times than it needs to be.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that answer. And I love the the pause. Just stop for a second. Think about it.
Yeah, before you tweet it out, email it, try to end it with a smiley face to make it less, think about it, pause. Is that really what the message is you want to share? Is it helpful? You see those visuals, like, is it helpful? Is it purposeful? Is it kind?
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now what I'm seeing, what I feel like, and what I'm around is we have to really remember that. Everybody goes through things. Just because people carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. We all have thought bubbles. Imagine if we all carried around the things we think about and people could read them in a day. Would we then allow more understanding and love and kindness?
That's a great place to just reflect and think.
Yeah.
Jen, this has been awesome. I love everything about you. I love the message that you spread. I love the way that you do it. This was a great way for us to spend a Saturday. So thank you so much for sitting with us and opening up with us.
My pleasure. It was so much fun.
Gosh.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in this week. Hopefully you're ready for another week of changing lives. We're so thankful and appreciative that you took time to listen to our guest, Jen McNally.
We hope as you head out that you remember to pay attention to the details around you and take time to remind yourself that you are changing lives each and every day. Have a good one.